So then, with all that being said, we are a week away from our fantasy draft, which will take place sometime next Friday. We haven't set a specific time for that yet, but that's something that we'll have to discuss later on over the next few days with some of the guys in our league. But with all this talk about the 22-man rosters, how do you see this kind of affecting our draft and kind of how some guys prioritize one position over the other?
You know, it's tough because I don't want to give away my secrets. But, there are some definitely important positions you want to hit first.
Yeah.
Face-off is big. You definitely want to hit a face-off player. I'd say goalie is a pretty big position because wall, everyone wants the Matt Rambos, the Marcus Holmans,
Yeah.
the Will Mannings, of course. However, there are a lot of great attackmen in the league. Marcus Holman, Will Manny, Gutty, Ryder Garnsey, Matt Cavanaugh. I can go down the list of a lot of great attackmen.
Right.
So I think if you don't take an attackman right at the front, you're not going to be dead in the water.
Absolutely.
So I think getting a face-off guy is paramount. I think also perhaps getting a good defensive player is going to be a big move as well. All of these defensive players in there, for the most part, are studs. But, I still think that you're going to have the defensive players, as far as I remember, get 7 points for a caused turnover. And that's a big point percentage. Like, that's heavy.
Yeah.
How many of those defensemen, though, are going to get a ton of turnovers? That's where you start to narrow that gap a little bit. So someone like a Garrett Epple, like that's a strong player. If he's able to get a number or at least a few caused turnovers per game, right there is 14, 21 points. That adds up quick.
Yeah.
So I would go for face-off men first, maybe solid defensemen, and I can't quite remember how the goalies make their points, but I would say a goalie up there, if you can get someone like a Jack Concannon, Kyle Burnmore, or maybe even Troutner, Timmy Trouts.
Yep.
That might be a good one as well. So, but everyone's got their own strategy, man. That's kind of what I would say, but you're not going to go wrong with Tom Shriver. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That guy's just freaking unbelievable. So, trust your gut a little bit. I think some positions are more important than others, but there you are.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree with everything that you just said. I definitely think that one thing to keep in mind with the specialist positions like the goalies and faceoff guys is that there's just less of them than, say, a midfielder or an attackman. And I think that especially in the later rounds of the draft, I'm not exactly sure how long the draft will be, but I think definitely in those later rounds, being able to identify certain guys and kind of find that sort of underdog pick, I guess you could say, will definitely be important as well because of the fact that we have a full 12-man league. So I did the math a few weeks ago on that, and about 60% of the players that will be in Utah will be taken in our league. So I think that the later rounds of our draft, as well as afterwards in the player pool, kind of like I said, being able to identify the talent there will be especially important for all of our teams.
Absolutely. And I think another thing to keep in mind as I think about it here, some of those defensive middies, or someone like a Jared Newman, that can get caused turnovers, but also might be able to get an assist or a goal in transition.
Absolutely.
That's where some of those guys are so important. You might not see that really with the Tucker Durkin as good as he is with caused turnovers, things like that, or Garrett Epple. But if you get someone like Newman or a defensive midi who is not afraid to pick that ball up, bring it all the way down, maybe get an assist, maybe get a goal, now you've got a player that you can get some offense production with and some defense production with. That's the best of both worlds.
And I think in that regard, talking about the defensive middies, I think looking at a team like the Atlas for something like that will be kind of on everybody's radar because of the fact that Ben Rubior said he wants to build this team with guys that can play both ends of the field and be versatile and pretty much do anything that he asks them to do. And with the fact that they're bringing guys like Costabile and Jeremy Thompson and Jake Richard and Unterstein and the list goes on and on. I think that you can pretty much take your pick of any one of those guys and be able to know that you're going to get at least some productivity out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see Brian Costabile. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a phenomenal player. And if you see him, shake a defender a little bit like he did in college, and he's got a little bit of room. I mean, the kid's got a cannon. He can easily be an outside shooter a little bit for Atlas to pull that defense up, maybe get some two-pointers in there. And what is the best news for him that he's going to hear in a long time? He's not going to, most likely not going to have a long pull playing him, which he's
Right.
had at Notre Dame for 3-4 years, whatever it is. Now he's finally got some other guys like Rabel and things that's going to pull that long pull over to the side. Congratulations, Brian. You now have a shorty on you. Have fun. He's going to be I think he's going to be a blast to watch, man.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that for the Atlas specifically, one of the issues for them, which is a good issue to have in my opinion, is going to be able to find a way to get the ball on these guys' sticks and be able to get them their shots and everything, because they just have shooters coming from absolutely everywhere on the field, at least on paper. So I definitely think for Ben Rubior, that's going to be a very nice problem to have, trying to figure out how they all kind of mesh together in that unit.
And the other thing is with Atlas, as far as the coaching goes, I thought they had a wonderful coach last year. I think he was great, but from what I saw in the huddles and everything, I felt like it was very player driven. I felt like it was very, we should, be doing this. Hey guys, look at this play, and you want that input because they're on the field, the coach is not.
Yeah.
However, if you have too much of that, then it turns into a little bit of a cluster of everyone having different ideas. Everyone's trying to mix it in. So I'm interested to see that change over. Another thing is with Chrome. I've been saying it since the beginning. Chrome is not going to roll over and die.
No.
And while we all agree Dom Starja is a Hall of Fame coach, he's a legend. And I'll die on that hill arguing that all day with anyone. But his lacrosse, the way he ran it was a little old school. We saw that towards the end of his run at Virginia with so many losses to ACC teams. I mean, it was a lot. He gets to Chrome. Chrome struggled throughout the season. Now, to their credit, a lot of it was overtime losses, but even still, couldn't quite close the door. So I'm interested to see how the new coach is going to impact them, how that's going to go, how they get things up and running. Now, this season, they're going to really, I think, going to really surprise a lot of people, but it's going to be tough to get the full essence of Chrome because now they're missing a lot of players that weren't able to make it. A key one being Joel White, who was an absolute snub on the All-Star game last year. He's one of the best LSMs in the world. He might not be the flashiest. He might not be the biggest talker like a Hartzell,
Yeah.
but his play speaks for itself. He's phenomenal, and him not being there is going to be a hit. That's going to be tough. Like I said, they have Reese Eddy that can bump up. He's an absolute stud. I've talked to him some. One of the coolest guys in the world, but still a rookie,
Right.
So anyhow, anxious to see how both those teams do with a new coach. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is another thing to watch for, is how these new coaches that have been brought into this league adjust to the different style and the different rules and things like that, and kind of see the learning curve, not just with their teams, but with them as well, kind of joining this league and kind of all that it has going on.
Yeah, and as we move over here, the whip snakes are going with the old mantra that defense wins championships. They lost a lot of offensive pieces, especially on the attack. But, I mean, they still have Rambo. Of course they do. They weren't going to let him go. Duh, whatever. But they still lost a lot of pieces on the offense. They kept everyone on the defense. It's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic of that team shift a little bit, maybe into more of just a total defensive powerhouse than being as much of lightning in a bottle as they were on offense.
Right. But yeah, we covered a lot of stuff in this episode. We talked about the 22-man rosters and kind of everything that goes into that, kind of broke that down a lot. gave our takes on some of the different teams and what we saw in the way that they assembled their rosters and kind of what surprised us most. Then we kind of morphed the conversation into looking at our fantasy draft and different things with that. So a lot of information. This will probably be another 2 or 3 part series for the Skype series, but still a lot of fun. I hope you had fun talking with me as well. Just a reminder for all you guys listening that you can catch the podcast on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Podchaser by searching Taking the Field with Stevie Mac. And that'll do it for episode 25. Thanks for listening, guys.